when the Red Ridge gang cornered Jim Ramirez at the truck stop, demanding protection money from another pathetic driver. They saw just an aging long hauler. What they didn't know was that Ramirez had served with SEAL Team 6 in Yemen. Now, as the gang leader made his move, years of combat instincts were already engaged. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead as Jim Ramirez slides onto a counterstool at the Desert Wind truck stop, his movements economical, precise. Nothing about the 42-year-old suggests anything remarkable. Faded jeans, well-worn plaid shirt, the standard uniform of thousands of long-haul truckers who pause at this remote Nevada highway junction. Yet the way his eyes perform a quick, systematic sweep of the room before settling into his chosen seat betrays habits formed long before he started hauling cargo. "Coffee, black," he tells Marge, the night shift waitress, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without raising his tone. The middle-aged woman nods, recognizing a regular who passes through every few weeks on his Denver to LA route. To casual observers, Jim appears to be just another road-weary driver stopping for a late meal on the endless stretch of desert highway. His dark hair is cut short but not military tight, his muscular build hidden beneath an unremarkable jacket. Only the precision with which he positions himself, back to wall, clear sightlines to both exits, might hint at something more. Jim checks his watch. A rugged tactical timepiece that survived sandstorms, firefights, and underwater demolition training. 9:37 p.m. Another 5 hours to Los Angeles if he pushes through, but Department of Transportation regulations and common sense demand a rest break. 15 years with SEAL Team 6 taught him that even the best operators need downtime. Specials meatloaf. "Tonight," Marge says, sliding coffee across the counter. "Kitchen closes at 11. "Meatloaf works," Jim responds, noting the half-empty dining room, two elderly truckers sharing a booth near the window, a family of 4 finishing their meal, and Carl, the night manager, restocking supplies behind. The counter. Standard situation, minimal variables, no obvious threats. The bell above the door chimes, drawing Jim's attention without seeming to. 5 men enter, their heavy boots tracking desert dust across the recently mopped floor. The leader, tall, lanky, with a red bandana tied around his neck, scans the room with predatory intensity before settling his gaze on the elderly couple. Jim catalogues details automatically. Leader, approximately 190 pounds, carrying concealed. Object in right jacket pocket based on weight distribution. Stance suggesting possible combat sports training, but no military discipline. 4 followers varying in size and apparent threat level. 1, the heavily tattooed man with a shaved head, showing prison yard musculature and characteristic vigilance. The assessment takes 3 seconds, a skill honed through countless missions, where threat identification meant survival for him and his team. Jim sips his coffee, attention seemingly on the menu, while his peripheral vision tracks the group claiming the largest booth, deliberately loud, clearly establishing dominance over the quiet space. "Red Ridge crew," Marge mutters under her breath, as she passes, just loud enough for Jim to hear. "Bad news. Hit 3 drivers last month, stole their cargo, trashed one guy's rig." Jim offers no response, but internally adjusts his threat assessment. Not random troublemakers, organized predators with established patterns, regular territory, coordinated methodology. He notes how Carl's shoulders tense, how the elderly couple exchange worried glances, how the family with children hurriedly. Signals for their check. "Hey, old-timer, that your blue Peterbilt outside?" The leader calls out to the elderly trucker, voice carrying deliberate challenge. "Yes, sir, it is," the older man responds, eyes down, clearly hoping politeness will deflect attention. "Sweet rig. Bet it's got a nice haul, too." The implied threat hangs in the air as the Red Ridge crew exchanges meaningful looks. Jim continues. Eating when his meatloaf arrives, movements methodical, positioning maintained. His mind calculates scenarios, escape routes, improvised weapons within reach. The sturdy ceramic mug offers impact potential. Steak knife provides piercing capability but risks escalation. Hot coffee creates distraction opportunity, standard tactical inventory, just like the countless operations he'd conducted from Baghdad to Kandahar. The family leaves quickly, father, hustling children through the door while maintaining constant visual contact with the Red Ridge table. Their departure shifts the room's dynamics. Fewer civilians, fewer complications, but also fewer witnesses. Jim's trained mind registers the tactical implications automatically. Through the large windows, Jim spots his own truck, a meticulously maintained Kenworth 3 years old, the culmination of his retirement plan after leaving the Navy. Inside, its secured trailer, medical supplies bound for a Los Angeles hospital, exactly the kind of valuable, resellable cargo that would attract professional thieves. "Damn! Check out that Kenworth!" the leader says suddenly, peering through the window. "Looks new. Bet that's carrying something worth having." "California plates," the tattooed man adds. "Driver's probably some soft city boy who's never had to scrap." The Red Ridge crew's attention shifts, surveying the truck stop's patrons, seeking the Kenworth's driver. Jim continues eating, giving no indication he's heard them or that the truck is his. His posture remains relaxed, but internally, he's shifted to combat awareness, the mental state SEAL operators maintain when mission parameters indicate imminent engagement. Not tonight, Jim thinks, calculating the odds of 5 aggressors, unknown weapons, civilian bystanders, and his responsibility to deliver critical medical supplies by morning. Not if I can help it. But 15 years in special operations had taught Jim Ramirez that some confrontations can't be avoided, only prepared for. As the Red Ridge leader rises from his booth, eyes scanning the counter until they settle on the unassuming truck driver eating alone, Jim knows this might be one of those situations. He takes another bite of meatloaf, movements unhurried. The night is about to get interesting. Jim cuts his meatloaf with precise movements, each piece exactly the same size, a habit from military life, where even the simplest tasks were executed with discipline. His position at the counter gives him optimal sightlines to monitor the Red Ridge crew without appearing to watch them. Through his peripheral vision, he observes them settling into a pattern he's seen countless times in hostile territories. Establishing dominance, identifying potential targets, controlling access points. The leader, red bandana, approximately 190 pounds, tactical designation Alpha in Jim's mental assessment, signals the waitress with a sharp whistle, the deliberate disrespect causing Marge to flinch. She approaches their table with visible reluctance, order pad clutched tightly. "What can I get you?" she asks, voice carefully neutral. "5 coffees and whatever pie you got," Alpha responds, then grabs her wrist as she turns to leave. "And don't make us wait, sweetheart. We get real impatient." Jim notes the subtle shifts in the truck stop's atmosphere. The elderly couple pays their bill hurriedly. The cook peers nervously through the kitchen window before disappearing again. Carl moves behind the counter, with deliberate nonchalance that fails to mask his tension. The pattern is clear. These men have established this truck stop as part of their hunting ground, and everyone recognizes the threat they represent. As Marge delivers their coffee, the tattooed man, beta designation prison-hardened, likely the most dangerous in close quarters, deliberately extends his foot into her path. Jim immediately recognizes the setup, having seen similar coordinated tactics during operations in Fallujah. 2 hostiles would create an artificial stumbling hazard, while others use the distraction to assess security measures or valuable targets. Marge manages to step over the extended boot, coffee cups wobbling precariously on her tray. Jim shifts slightly on his stool, left hand now resting casually near his coffee mug, right hand positioned for optimal response if needed. The movement is subtle, nothing that would trigger aggression, but preparing his body mechanics for efficient defensive action. A memory surfaces, Lieutenant Commander Wilson drilling his team on threat assessment in civilian environments. "Your most valuable weapon isn't your firearm," Wilson had said. "It's your ability to read a situation before it goes critical." Jim does exactly that now, building a comprehensive threat profile as he eats. The Red Ridge crew has established triangulated positioning in the diner, covering both exits, maintaining sightlines to the register, and creating a buffer zone around their table that allows them to observe without being approached unexpectedly. Their harassment follows an escalating pattern, targeting the waitress and elderly couple with increasing aggression approximately every 4 minutes. When Alpha makes a crude comment about Marge's retreating form, Jim carefully places his fork on his plate and takes a deliberate sip of coffee. The minor adjustment provides better mechanical advantage from his seated position, an instinctive tactical repositioning that would be invisible to untrained observers. "Hey, Carl," Jim says quietly as the manager passes. The casual greeting contains a question, obvious only to someone attuned to subtle vocal modulations. Carl hesitates, understanding the unspoken inquiry. "They hit this place about twice a month," he answers softly, pretending to wipe the counter. "Sheriff's office is 45 minutes out. By the time deputies arrive, they're usually gone with whatever they came for." Jim absorbs this intelligence, integrating it into his tactical assessment. The crew operates with established patterns in a remote location with delayed law enforcement response. Their confidence suggests successful previous operations without consequences. "Last month, they caught Dylan Parker out by the pumps," Carl continues, eyes darting toward the Red Ridge table. "Beat him pretty bad, took his whole shipment of electronics. Week before that, they slashed Marcus Johnson's tires when he refused to unlock his trailer." Through the large windows, Jim spots 2 additional men now circling his Kenworth, examining its locks and security features. The situation is deteriorating. Ito, team members outside conducting reconnaissance, main group inside establishing dominance, civilian personnel showing increasing distress patterns. "That your rig out there?" "The Kenworth?" Carl asks, noticing Jim's momentary focus shift. "Yes," Jim responds simply, calculating new variables. 7 potential hostiles now, divided between interior and exterior, with civilians present and valuable cargo at risk. The situation metrics are approaching intervention threshold. Alpha rises suddenly, slamming his coffee mug down with unnecessary force. "Hey, you!" he calls toward the elderly trucker, trying to leave quietly with his wife. "We're not done talking about your rig." The old man freezes, positioning himself protectively in front of his wife. "Please, we're just passing through. Don't want any trouble." "Should have thought about that before you parked in our spot," Alpha responds. Though the truck stop has no assigned parking, the arbitrary accusation is classic intimidation methodology, creating an impossible-to-avoid transgression to justify predetermined aggression. Jim watches the elderly couple's body language, fear, resignation, the unconscious compensation postures of people who've experienced previous physical trauma. The wife's hand trembles visibly as she clutches her husband's arm. "It's my spot. Tonight," Alpha continues, advancing toward the couple, "means you owe me a rental fee. Let's say, whatever you're hauling ought to cover it." Jim places his coffee mug down with deliberate precision, the soft sound drawing Alpha's attention momentarily. Exactly as intended. In that brief window of distraction, Jim makes eye contact with the elderly trucker and subtly gestures toward the exit just behind them. The man understands immediately, guiding his wife backward toward the door while Alpha's focus remains divided. "Something to say, buddy?" Alpha's attention shifts fully to Jim now, recognizing the deliberate intervention. Jim returns to his meal, expression neutral, but his respiration and muscle tone have already adjusted to pre-engagement levels. The automatic physiological preparation seals undergo before anticipated combat. His situational awareness has expanded to track all variables: 5 hostiles inside, 2 outside, 4 civilians plus himself, multiple potential weapons within reach, limited cover options. "Just enjoying my dinner," Jim responds evenly, neither challenging nor submissive. His voice carries the same calm authority that once directed classified operations in the world's most dangerous environments. Alpha studies him for a moment, sensing something he can't quite identify. Predators recognize potential threats instinctively, even when they can't articulate why. Jim Ramirez has just been upgraded from easy target to person of interest in the Red Ridge leader's assessment. The night's trajectory has shifted. What began as routine predatory harassment has evolved into something more focused, more personal. The Red Ridge crew has identified a new target, completely unaware they've fixed their attention on a man with more confirmed hostile eliminations than their entire crew combined. Jim takes another bite of meatloaf, movements unhurried, expression placid. Inside, his mind continues calculating angles, distances, response options, and threat priorities with the precision that once made him one of the Navy's most effective operators. The confrontation isn't a matter of if, only when. The desert wind truck stop falls silent as Alpha approaches Jim's position at the counter, footsteps deliberately heavy, creating impact noise designed to intimidate. Jim continues eating, not acknowledging the approaching threat, until Alpha positions himself directly behind Jim's right shoulder, a standard intimidation tactic meant to establish dominance through invasion of personal space. "That your Kenworth outside?" Alpha asks, voice pitched to carry across the diner, ensuring all patrons become witnesses to the confrontation. Jim turns slightly, just enough to make eye contact without surrendering his advantageous seated position. "It is," he answers simply, providing confirmation without elaboration, a response technique developed during hostile interrogation resistance training. "Sweet rig," Alpha continues, sliding onto the stool beside Jim, deliberately crowding his space. "Bet it's hauling something valuable. California plates, medical company logo, pharmaceuticals maybe?" The targeted intelligence gathering confirms Jim's assessment. Not random troublemakers, but organized cargo thieves with specific methodology. They're not just looking for easy violence, they're conducting reconnaissance for a planned theft. "Just passing through," Jim responds, returning to his meal. His posture remains relaxed, but internally he's mapped Alpha's position relative to his own, calculated optimal response angles, and identified 3 immediate counters should physical engagement become necessary. "Passing through our territory," Alpha emphasizes, signaling to his crew who spread out slightly, taking positions that block sightlines to the exits. The tattooed Beta moves closest to Marge, while the others establish perimeter control positions. Coordinated movement suggesting previous tactical training, likely criminal rather than military, based on their undisciplined execution. Jim notes Carl disappearing into the back office, likely calling local authorities, despite knowing response time exceeds 40 minutes. The elderly couple has successfully exited, reducing civilian variables within the engagement zone. "Didn't realize Nevada highways had private ownership," Jim comments, tone neutral, despite the deliberate provocation. He's maintaining conversation to assess Alpha's temperament, intelligence, and potential weaknesses, standard information, gathering protocol for anticipated hostile engagement. Alpha's eyes narrow slightly, detecting the subtle challenge beneath Jim's calm exterior. Smart mouth for a solo driver. "Most folks passing through understand how things work here." "How do they work?" Jim asks, still focused on his meal, denying Alpha the full attention he's attempting to command. Another calculated decision to undermine the intimidation attempt. Alpha deliberately bumps Jim's shoulder hard enough to jostle his coffee. The physical contact crosses the operational threshold from verbal intimidation to physical engagement, a significant escalation in the tactical situation. What happens next occurs so smoothly that observers might miss the precision behind it. As coffee sloshes toward the counter edge, Jim's hand moves with liquid efficiency, catching the mug before it can spill, stabilizing it with no wasted movement, no coffee lost. The movement demonstrates extraordinary reflexes and body control, a momentary glimpse of capabilities otherwise concealed beneath his unassuming exterior. Alpha notices, his expression flickering briefly with uncertainty before hardening again. Things work with drivers showing proper respect. Respect means understanding that safe passage comes with costs. Sounds like highway robbery with extra steps, Jim observes, finally turning to face Alpha directly. His gaze is steady, unflinching, devoid of the fear or nervous aggression most civilians display when confronted. "Call it a security service," Alpha responds, dropping all pretense. "500 cash ensures your truck doesn't have any unfortunate accidents. Membership has its privileges." Jim studies him with the same calm assessment that once evaluated high-value targets in combat zones. He's gathering final intelligence before making tactical decisions, assessing commitment level, identifying whether Alpha is the true decision-maker or following orders from elsewhere, determining if de-escalation remains possible. "Not interested," Jim states simply, turning back to his meal. The direct refusal creates momentary confusion. Most victims either comply out of fear or escalate with misplaced bravado. Jim's controlled dismissal follows neither expected pattern, temporarily disrupting Alpha's practiced intimidation sequence. "You're not hearing me, friend," Alpha recovers, voice hardening as he leans closer. "This isn't optional. Either you pay the toll, or we collect it ourselves from whatever you're hauling after we teach you some manners." Jim places his fork down with deliberate precision, the movement drawing Alpha's attention to his hands. Strong, scarred across the knuckles, marked with the calluses of someone intimately familiar with both physical labor and violence, not the soft hands Alpha expected from his city boy assessment. "I understand completely," Jim responds, voice remaining level despite the explicit threat. "And I'm still not interested." Alpha stands, frustration evident in his posture. The confrontation isn't proceeding according to his standard playbook. He signals to his crew with a subtle head movement, and they begin to close ranks, creating a loose semicircle around Jim's position. "You've got the wrong idea about how this conversation ends," Alpha states, hand moving toward his jacket pocket where Jim had earlier noted the concealed object. "Nobody says no to us. Not in this place." Jim maintains his seated position, appearing unthreatened despite being surrounded. His breathing remains controlled, his muscles relaxed yet primed for explosive movement if necessary. The combat-ready state that SEAL operators can maintain indefinitely during high-threat scenarios. "First time for everything," he responds, meeting Alpha's gaze directly. Something in Jim's unwavering calm finally registers with Alpha at a primitive level, the instinctive recognition that he's miscalculated his target. "We'll continue this conversation outside," Alpha decides, stepping back slightly. "After you finish your meal, don't keep us waiting too long." As the Red Ridge crew retreats to their table, maintaining visual contact with Jim, Marge approaches cautiously to refill his coffee. "You should leave while you can," she whispers urgently. "They'll follow you out, probably have guys watching your truck already." Jim offers a barely perceptible nod. "I know," he says quietly. "How many other drivers are staying tonight?" 3 rigs out back besides yours, and the older couple who left," she responds. "Family with kids in the motel section." Jim absorbs this information, factoring civilian safety into his evolving tactical assessment. The Red Ridge crew has established a pattern now: retreat and regroup before escalating to actual violence. They're likely communicating with their outside team members, preparing for a coordinated approach once Jim exits the building. "Everything will be fine," he assures Marge, the certainty in his voice making her pause. "You don't understand what these men are capable of," she protests. Jim Ramirez says nothing, but his eyes, suddenly cold with the focused intensity that once made him one of the most effective operators in naval special warfare, tell a different story. He understands exactly what these men are capable of. What they don't yet understand is what he is capable of. The real confrontation is still to come, and Jim is already mapping every possible variable with the systematic precision that kept him alive through 15 years of America's most dangerous covert operations. The fluorescent lights flicker momentarily as Jim finishes his meal, A brief interruption that goes unnoticed by most patrons but registers immediately in his tactical awareness. He catalogues it automatically. Potential electrical issues, possible impact on visibility if confrontation occurs, adjustment needed for any low-light scenario. Years of special operations had programmed him to process environmental changes as potential variables in threat assessment. Alpha returns to his companions, but their conversation has shifted, less boisterous, more focused, with deliberate glances toward Jim. Their body language has changed subtly, transitioning from random intimidation to targeted interest. He's become the objective, exactly as he intended. Better him than the remaining patrons or the family lodged in the adjacent motel. More coffee? On? Marge approaches with the pot, her voice steadier now, drawing confidence from Jim's composed presence. Thanks, Jim responds, pushing his cup forward. Everything okay with the night manager? The question is casual, but deliberate, gathering intelligence about potential allies or additional threats. Marge understands immediately. Carl's in the office pretending to call the sheriff again, she answers quietly. But last 3 times they showed up, deputies took almost an hour. Place could be burned down by then. Jim nods once, filing away this confirmation of no immediate backup. With practiced efficiency, he's mentally mapped the truck stop's layout, catalogued available resources, and calculated optimum defensive positions should intervention become necessary. The bell above the door chimes as a weathered trucker in his 60s enters, looking exhausted. Jim watches as the man hesitates, sensing the tension in the diner before reluctantly taking a booth. Alpha's attention immediately shifts, exchanging meaningful glances with his companions. Jim recognizes the predatory assessment, new potential target, calculation of vulnerability, opportunity evaluation. Through the windows, Jim spots the 2 outside crew members returning to the diner. Mission accomplished. His truck has been thoroughly examined, its vulnerabilities assessed, its cargo confirmed as valuable. The tactical situation is deteriorating. 7 hostiles now consolidated inside, civilians present, Red Ridge crew transitioning from intimidation to action planning. That's Ray Peterson, Marge whispers as she refills Jim's coffee. Hall's livestock feed. They took half his cargo last month, beat him when he objected. Medical bills wiped out his savings. Jim studies the elderly driver's body language. The wary eyes, hunched shoulders, unconscious flinch when Alpha laughs too loudly. Classic signs of previous traumatic experience. Place used to be different, Marge continues, voice barely audible. Desert wind was a lifeline for the community. Truckers knew they could rest safe here. Locals had steady jobs. Since these guys started calling it their territory, she trails off, watching as one of the Red Ridge crew approaches Ray's table. You're back awful soon, old-timer, the man says, leaning over Ray's booth. Figured you'd learned your lesson about our toll. Ray stares at his menu, hands trembling slightly. Just need some coffee before hitting the road again. Not staying long. Long enough to pay what you owe from last time, the man continues, voice hardening. Interest has been adding up. Jim watches the interaction carefully, the scenario unfolding exactly as anticipated, establishing pattern, confirming methodology, escalating demands against vulnerable targets. His SEAL training emphasized thorough intelligence gathering before engagement, understanding the adversary's complete operational structure rather than just the immediate threat. The diner's atmosphere grows increasingly tense as 2 more Red Ridge members join their companion at Ray's table, effectively trapping the elderly driver in his booth. Carl peers nervously from the office door, but makes no move to intervene. 300 cash, the tattooed beta demands, leaning into Ray's space. Or maybe we check your rig again, see what else you're hiding. I don't have that kind of money, Ray protests weakly. Last time you took everything? Alpha rises from his table, approaching the confrontation. Seems like you don't value your truck much then. Accidents happen to unprotected vehicles out here. Jim places his coffee mug down with deliberate precision. The situation has crossed another threshold: direct extortion and explicit threats against a vulnerable civilian with previous victimization history. His responsibility calculation shifts accordingly. "Everything okay over there?" Jim asks, voice carrying calm authority across the diner. The Red Ridge crew turns as one, momentarily surprised by the intervention. Ray's expression shows equal parts hope and fear, aware that help is being offered but terrified of the potential consequences. "Private conversation," Alpha responds, eyes narrowing at Jim. "Thought I told you to mind your own business." "Just checking," Jim replies, maintaining his relaxed posture while subtly shifting his weight distribution for optimal response positioning. Sounded like harassment from over here. The directness of Jim's challenge creates momentary confusion among the Red Ridge crew. Their established pattern relies on isolation and intimidation. Direct confrontation from an unintimidated observer disrupts their methodology. "You really want to make this your problem?" Alpha asks, leaving Ray's booth to approach Jim. The other crew members spread out slightly, instinctively moving to tactical positions around the diner. "Already is my problem," Jim responds evenly. "You're blocking the coffee pot." The deliberate de-escalation through humor catches Alpha off guard, another deviation from the expected fear-aggression response pattern. Jim is controlling the engagement tempo, disrupting their practiced intimidation sequence while positioning himself as the primary target. Alpha's face hardens as he processes the challenge to his authority. Outside, now. Time we had a proper conversation about respect. "After I finish my coffee," Jim counters calmly, taking another deliberate sip while maintaining eye contact. A clear dominance challenge that Alpha cannot ignore without losing face before his crew. The tension in the diner reaches critical threshold as Alpha leans forward, invading Jim's personal space. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, truck driver." Jim's expression remains impassive, but something changes in his eyes. A momentary glimpse of the focused intensity that once made him one of SEAL Team 6's most effective operators. "That makes two of us." Ray uses the distraction to slide out of his booth, moving quickly toward the counter, where Marge guides him through the swinging door into the kitchen. Exactly the opportunity Jim intended to create by redirecting the Red Ridge crew's attention to himself. "Nobody leaves until I say so," Alpha shouts, noticing Ray's escape too late. "Seems like he just did," Jim observes, finishing his coffee with deliberate calm, despite the 7 hostile individuals now focused entirely on him. Alpha's control visibly fractures, his practiced intimidation methodology disrupted by an opponent who refuses to follow the expected response pattern. "You've just bought yourself a world of pain, friend." Jim stands slowly, his movements economical and precise. At his full height, his physical presence becomes more apparent, the muscular build previously disguised by his seated position, the balanced stance of someone intimately familiar with violence, the absolute calm of a man who has faced far worse threats than 7 untrained criminals. "Not your friend," Jim corrects quietly, positioning himself between the Red Ridge crew and the kitchen door, where civilians have taken refuge. "And not afraid of your world." The battle lines have been drawn. Jim Ramirez, former Navy SEAL with 15 years of combat operations, has been identified as the primary obstacle to the Red Ridge crew's established pattern of intimidation and theft. What they still don't understand is just how significant an obstacle he truly is. The Desert Wind truck stop falls silent as Jim stands at the counter, 7 members of the Red Ridge crew now forming a loose semicircle around him. Alpha takes center position, flanked by the tattooed Beta and a heavyset man with a chain wrapped around his right fist. The remaining 4 spread out to block potential escape routes, a coordinated encirclement suggesting practiced group. "In tactics, last chance to walk out of here on your own 2 feet, Alpha states, closing to intimidation distance. "Nobody disrespects us in our territory." Jim remains perfectly still, his breathing controlled and steady, despite the adrenaline now entering his system. His eyes track minute details, weight distributions indicating which men will move first, hand positions revealing concealed weapons, subtle signals between crew members suggesting their attack sequence. Territory implies ownership, Jim responds calmly. This place belongs to its customers and employees. Not to you. Alpha's jaw tightens at the direct challenge. He steps forward and deliberately pokes Jim's chest with enough force to rock most men back on their heels. This looked like a man who doesn't understand his situation, he announces to his crew, voice pitched for maximum intimidation effect. Jim doesn't move, doesn't flinch, his balance so perfectly centered that the push has no visible impact. The demonstration of unusual physical control creates momentary confusion among the Red Ridge crew. Most targets either retreat from physical contact or respond with immediate aggression. "Don't touch me again," Jim states, voice carrying. Quiet certainty rather than threat. It's the same tone he once used issuing final warnings to hostile forces before SEAL team engagement. A professional courtesy offered before irreversible action. Alpha's face flushes with anger at the continued defiance. "Or what, truck driver?" He pokes Jim's chest again, harder this time, determined to provoke a reaction. What happens next occurs with such controlled precision that the Red Ridge crew doesn't immediately process what they're seeing. Jim's hand moves at tactical speed, capturing Alpha's extended wrist with a grip that immobilizes the joint without applying pain compliance. Yet, "I said don't touch me." Jim's voice remains level, his body position unchanged, except for the single hand now controlling Alpha's wrist in a textbook joint manipulation hold. Alpha instinctively tries to pull away, finding his arm locked in a biomechanical position that permits no movement without explicit compliance from Jim. The sudden reversal of physical dominance triggers visible shock across Alpha's features. "Get off me!" Alpha demands, voice rising as he discovers he cannot break the hold despite superior height and weight advantage. "Let him go!" Beta growls, stepping forward with prison yard confidence. "Now!" Jim studies Beta with clinical detachment, still maintaining the wrist control that keeps Alpha immobilized without apparent effort. "Everyone walks away," he states calmly. "That's the offer. Take it." Beta reaches inside his jacket, pulling out a switchblade that snaps open with practiced familiarity. "Only one walking away is you. In pieces." Jim releases Alpha with a controlled push that sends him stumbling back into his companions, creating momentary confusion in their formation. The deliberate tactical displacement buys seconds needed to address the more immediate knife threat. "Don't," Jim warns Beta, stance shifting subtly into a defensive position that would be recognizable to any combat-trained observer. His hands remain open, relaxed at mid-level, not telegraphing aggression but positioned for optimal response. Beta lunges forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to dominating through fear and superior weaponry. The knife arcs toward Jim's midsection in a standard intimidation strike, designed more to frighten than to cause immediate critical injury. Jim's response demonstrates decades of close-quarters combat training. He steps offline rather than backward, allowing the knife to pass through empty space while simultaneously capturing Beta's wrist with his left hand. His right hand delivers a precisely calibrated strike to the brachial plexus origin, the nerve bundle where neck meets shoulder. Beta's arm goes instantly numb, the knife clattering to the floor as neurological disruption renders his hand temporarily useless. Before he can process what's happened, Jim transitions the wrist control into a joint manipulation technique that forces Beta to his knees, face contorted in pain but incapable of resistance. "Stay down," Jim commands, applying precisely enough pressure to ensure compliance without causing permanent injury. A restraint technique developed specifically for high-value target capture rather than elimination. The entire sequence takes less than 3 seconds. The remaining Red Ridge members freeze momentarily, combat software rebooting as they process the unexpected display of professional violence. Their experienced intimidation tactics have never encountered legitimate combat capability. "Who the hell are you?" Alpha demands, backing away slightly as Jim releases Beta, who remains on his knees, arm hanging uselessly at his side. "Someone giving you one last chance to leave," Jim responds, retrieving the fallen knife and placing it on the counter behind him. His positioning is deliberate, maintaining optimal distance while using the counter as a barrier to limit approach. Vectors. Alpha signals to the man with the chain wrapped around his fist, who steps forward with calculated aggression. The tactical situation has shifted from intimidation to actual combat now. The Red Ridge crew's pride demanding restoration after 2 failed engagement attempts. "Hold up," Alpha instructs suddenly, studying Jim with new assessment. Something about the efficiency of movement, the absolute control, the professional restraint has triggered recognition. "Military?" Jim offers no response, maintaining defensive positioning while tracking all 7 potential threats with the situational awareness honed through hundreds of combat operations. "Doesn't matter," Alpha decides, misinterpreting Jim's silence as confirmation of basic military background rather than elite special operations experience. "7 of us, 1 of you, nobody's coming to help. The odds don't work." "Odds are irrelevant," Jim states quietly. "Training is what matters." The simple declaration carries such absolute conviction that several Red Ridge members exchange uncertain glances. Leaders maintain command through unwavering confidence. Any hesitation undermines authority. Alpha recognizes the threat to his position immediately. "Take him," he orders, stepping back to direct rather than engage, a tactical retreat that doesn't go unnoticed by his crew. Chain Fist advances first, swinging his weighted hand in a wide arc, meant to use the improvised weapon's reach advantage. Simultaneously, 2 others move to flank Jim from opposite sides, a coordinated attack designed to overwhelm a single opponent through multiple engagement vectors. Jim's expression doesn't change as the attack unfolds. His breathing remains controlled, his posture balanced and ready. This isn't his first time facing multiple opponents with lethal intent. It's simply the first time the Red Ridge crew has faced someone like Jim Ramirez. The night is about to teach them the difference between highway intimidation and actual combat against a Tier 1 operator with more confirmed hostile eliminations than their entire crew combined. The diner erupts into controlled chaos as 3 Red Ridge members converge on Jim from different angles. Chain Fist leads with a wide, telegraphed swing, while his companions move to exploit what they believe will be exposed flanks after Jim evades the primary attack. It's a standard ambush technique that would overwhelm most opponents through sheer numerical advantage. Jim processes the tactical situation in milliseconds, combat training activating with the automatic precision built through thousands of repetitions in the world's most demanding special operations unit. Time seems to slow as his SEAL experience calculates trajectories, identifies priority threats, and determines optimal response sequence. He moves with fluid efficiency, stepping inside Chain Fist's wide arc rather than retreating, the counterintuitive response disrupting the coordinated attack pattern. Before the improvised weapon completes its swing, Jim delivers a precisely calibrated strike to Chain Fist's floating ribs, followed by a textbook elbow control technique that redirects the man's momentum into his approaching companion. The two collide awkwardly as Jim pivots smoothly to address the third attacker, who hesitates just long enough for Jim to exploit the momentary confusion. A surgical leg sweep combined with calculated downward pressure sends the man crashing into a nearby table, glass and silverware scattering across the linoleum floor. "Stop!" Jim commands, voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. The sudden reversal, 3 attackers neutralized in seconds without apparent effort, creates momentary psychological paralysis among the remaining Red Ridge members. Chain Fist struggles to rise, face contorted with equal parts pain and confusion. His weapon hand hangs uselessly, the chain now on the floor beside him. "What the hell?" he gasps, the carefully calibrated rib strike having temporarily compromised his diaphragm function without causing permanent damage. Alpha's expression shifts from confidence to calculation as he reassesses the tactical situation. His crew's coordinated attack has been systematically dismantled by someone demonstrating professional combat capabilities far beyond standard military training. "Everybody back," he orders, reaching into his jacket to produce a switchblade similar to the one Jim had earlier confiscated from Beta. "Let's see how good you are against this." Jim maintains his balanced stance, breathing controlled, hands positioned for optimal defensive response. His eyes track not just the knife, but Alpha's weight distribution, grip tension, eye movement, all indicators of attack intention and sequence that SEAL operators are trained to read instantaneously. "That's a federal offense," Jim observes calmly, referring to the knife. Assault with a deadly weapon escalates what was simple harassment into potential prison time. The clinical assessment, delivered with professional detachment rather than fear, creates momentary hesitation in Alpha's approach. Most victims plead or threaten. They don't calmly explain legal consequences in the middle of violent confrontation. "Nobody's pressing charges from a hospital bed," Alpha snarls, circling slowly, knife held in practice grip that suggests some formal training. The remaining Red Ridge members spread out again, creating a wider containment perimeter while maintaining visual coverage of all potential escape routes. Through the kitchen window, Jim spots Marge on the phone, likely updating emergency services on the escalating situation. Carl and Ray remain safely behind locked doors, civilian safety temporarily secured. The tactical situation has crystallized into a classic threat containment scenario. Control the armed primary aggressor while maintaining awareness of secondary threats. "Last chance to walk away," Jim offers, voice steady despite the lethal threat now facing him. His stance shifts subtly, weight balanced perfectly between both feet, hands positioned at mid-level, the deceptively relaxed readiness posture taught to SEAL operators for close-quarters combat against armed opponents. Alpha's response is a sudden lunge, knife arcing toward Jim's midsection in a practiced killing strike. The movement is fast, technically sound, and would be lethal against most opponents. Against a former SEAL with 15 years of combat experience, it might as well be happening in slow motion. Jim's counter is a textbook demonstration of blade defense. Offline movement, combined with simultaneous arm control and body positioning that exploits biomechanical vulnerabilities in the human skeletal structure. His left hand captures Alpha's wrist from the outside, immobilizing the knife while his right delivers a precisely targeted strike to the brachial nerve bundle. Alpha's arm goes temporarily numb, grip involuntarily releasing the knife as neurological disruption cascades through his dominant hand. Before the weapon hits the floor, Jim transitions seamlessly into a joint control technique, using Alpha's own forward momentum to propel him face first onto the counter, with his arm locked behind him in a position that permits no movement without causing immediate shoulder dislocation. "Don't move," Jim instructs, applying exactly enough pressure to ensure compliance without causing permanent injury. The same restraint techniques used to capture high-value targets during classified operations in hostile territory. The remaining Red Ridge members stare in stunned silence at the systematic dismantling of their leadership. 4 of their members are now neutralized, Chain Fist still struggling for breath on the floor, Beta nursing a temporarily paralyzed arm, a third sprawled among broken dishes, and Alpha immobilized in a professional control hold. What started as routine intimidation has transformed into something none of them have experienced. confrontation with a legitimate combat professional who understands not just violence, but the controlled application of force with tactical precision. "This ends now," Jim states, maintaining the control hold on Alpha while scanning the remaining threats. Everyone walks away. Nobody goes to the hospital or jail. Final offer. The diner's main door suddenly bursts open as the last two Red Ridge members attempt a desperate flanking maneuver from outside, one brandishing a crowbar, the other carrying what appears to be a trucker's tire iron. Their coordinated entry suggests Alpha had signaled for backup before initiating the knife. "Attack! Let him go or we start breaking things," Crowbar threatens, smashing a nearby chair for emphasis. "Starting with your skull." Jim's expression doesn't change, but his tactical assessment shifts immediately to accommodate the new threat variables. He's now facing 6 active hostiles in confined quarters, with inferior position and a restrained primary aggressor who requires continued control to prevent re-engagement. For most individuals, the situation would be impossible. For a Tier 1 operator with multiple combat deployments, it's simply another tactical problem, requiring appropriate response calibration. "Your call," Jim tells Alpha, increasing pressure slightly on the control joint. "Tell them to stand down, or we find out exactly how far this arm can bend before something breaks permanently." Alpha's face contorts with both pain and rage as he processes the tactical reality. His crew is outmatched despite superior numbers, and he personally faces immediate debilitating injury if the confrontation continues. "Stand down," he finally gasps, voice strained from his uncomfortable position. "Everyone back off." The remaining Red Ridge members hesitate, weapons still raised, clearly uncertain how to proceed with their leader effectively hostage to a single truck driver who has inexplicably dismantled more than half their crew without apparent effort. The standoff has reached critical threshold. Resolution or catastrophic escalation now depends on the next 60 seconds of decision-making by increasingly desperate men with damaged pride and diminishing options. The Desert Wind truck stop hangs in tense silence as the Red Ridge crew processes their deteriorating tactical situation. 4 members effectively neutralized, their leader immobilized in a professional control hold, and their intimidation strategy completely reversed by a single opponent demonstrating combat capabilities far beyond their experience. Crowbar and tire iron maintain aggressive postures, but haven't advanced further since Alpha's command to stand down. "Weapons on the floor," Jim instructs, voice calm, but carrying unmistakable authority. Slowly. Crowbar exchanges uncertain glances with his remaining companions, clearly weighing options against increasingly unfavorable odds. "This ain't over." He growls, but the threat lacks conviction as he witnesses Alpha's continued controlled immobilization. "It is for tonight," Jim responds evenly. "Weapons down, then you help your friends outside. Everyone leaves, no one gets hurt worse than they already are." The professional assessment, delivered without anger or unnecessary force, creates cognitive dissonance among the Red Ridge crew. Their methodology relies on escalating intimidation, meeting fearful compliance or disorganized resistance. Jim's systematic, controlled response pattern falls outside their operational experience. "Do it," Alpha orders through gritted teeth, the continued joint manipulation making the command sound more desperate than intended. "Put them down." The crowbar hits the linoleum first, followed reluctantly by the tire iron. Jim maintains perfect positional awareness while securing Alpha, noting exact locations of discarded weapons, positioning of remaining hostiles, and potential improvised threats within the environment. The tactical calculations occur automatically after years of combat operations requiring split-second threat assessment. "On your knees, hands behind your heads," Jim directs the standing crew members, applying slightly increased pressure to Alpha's controlled joint when they hesitate. This isn't negotiable. The remaining Red Ridge members comply slowly, pride visibly struggling against self-preservation as they assume the commanded position. Only when they're properly secured does Jim adjust his control technique on Alpha, transitioning to a specialized escort hold that maintains complete directional control while allowing limited mobility. "Move toward your crew," Jim instructs. Alpha, guiding him with practiced efficiency using minimal necessary force, the same controlled detainment techniques he'd employed during high-value target extraction operations. Alpha finds himself forced to his knees among his subordinates, arms still secured in a position that permits no resistance without immediate consequences. Jim maintains the hold with one hand while retrieving his phone with the other, never losing tactical awareness of all 7 potential threats. "Carl," Jim calls toward the kitchen, where the manager watches through the window. "Zip ties in my truck's side compartment. Black toolbox. Combination 2597. The night manager disappears immediately, grateful for specific actionable instructions amid the chaos. Jim's phone connects to emergency services, his report to dispatch demonstrating the same professional precision as his physical control techniques. 7 male subjects subdued at Desert Wind truck stop, mile marker 157 on Highway 95, he states calmly. Multiple weapons involved. Situation contained, but requires immediate response. The dispatcher's voice carries clear surprise at the clinical assessment from a civilian caller. "Sir, officers are en route, but still approximately 35 minutes out. Are you in a safe location?" "Affirmative," Jim responds, unconsciously reverting to military communication protocols. Suspects are secured. No serious injuries, no civilians harmed. As he secures the scene, Jim maintains constant awareness of the Red Ridge crew's psychological state. Their initial shock has transitioned to simmering resentment, particularly from Beta, whose prison experience suggests potential for unpredictable aggression despite his temporarily disabled arm. "Who the hell are you really?" Beta demands, voice tight with pain and wounded pride. Jim doesn't answer, maintaining professional focus on scene control rather than engaging with unnecessary conversation. His priority remains containment until proper authorities arrive, standard operating procedure for any mission aftermath. Carl returns with the requested zip ties, professional-grade restraints rather than standard plastic bindings. Jim secures each Red Ridge member with practiced efficiency, using specialized double-loop techniques that provide controllable restraint without creating circulation issues or unnecessary discomfort. "You some kind of cop?" Alpha asks as Jim secures his wrists, the question revealing growing awareness that they've encountered someone with specialized training beyond civilian experience. "Just a truck driver who doesn't appreciate being threatened," Jim answers, completing the restraint before moving to the next subject. His movements remain methodical, controlled, revealing years of experience in detainment procedures. Only, after all 7 Red Ridge members are properly secured, does Jim allow himself to stand down from full combat readiness, though his situational awareness remains active. He performs a systematic sweep of the diner, securing discarded weapons and confirming no additional threats exist, before signaling Marge and the others that it's safe to emerge from the kitchen. "Everyone okay?" he asks, checking the civilians for signs of shock or injury, while maintaining visual contact with the restrained subjects. "How did you?" Carl begins, staring at the 7 secured men now seated against the diner's front wall. "I mean, there were 7 of them. Training," Jim answers simply, applying a compression bandage to a minor cut on his knuckle, the only injury he sustained during the entire confrontation. The wound is almost insulting to someone who's operated, with broken ribs and bullet grazes during more demanding missions. Ray approaches cautiously, expression a mix of awe and relief. "What you did, I've never seen anything like it. Where'd you learn to fight like that?" Jim's response is interrupted by Alpha's bitter laugh. "Figure it out yet? The way he moves, the control techniques?" He spits on the floor, glaring at his restrained companions. "We just tried to roll a damn operator. The term triggers immediate recognition among several Red Ridge members, their expressions shifting from anger to something approaching fear as they reassess the man who systematically dismantled their entire crew. "Military?" Ray asks Jim, newfound respect evident in his voice. Jim offers a measured nod, neither confirming nor denying the more specific assessment. His focus remains on security until proper authorities arrive, methodically checking restraints and positioning to ensure complete control is maintained. Marge brings him fresh coffee without being asked, placing it carefully